that, I think Tom's going to talk about the value or the cost of quality.
Thanks, Scott. So, cost of quality. We started our topic, in our agenda, value of quality. And to me, I'm a long-time business person. We always look for value proposition, value basis. What do we get out of it, right? What's the bang for the buck, right? And to the stakeholder, that's the value proposition of doing whatever it is that we're doing. And in this case, we're talking about quality, of course. So interestingly, the quality industry takes a little bit of a different approach, and they look at what they call the cost of quality, which is the cost of not creating a quality product or service. Back to our gentleman's question about defects. It's going to relate here in a minute. Versus the price of creating a high quality product or service. So again, we're talking about defect elimination. I mentioned Six Sigma, right? There's cost associated with those defects. There's also cost with the investment to avoid those defects, right? To get to that hopefully as close to zero defects as we can get. So there's an investment. There's also the cost in things like every time work is redone, right? So we talk that the buzzword in the quality business sector is rework, right? And here's some examples, right? A manufactured item, right? Before a car is shipped, they find that there's a scratch in the paint, has to be repaired at the factory, right? Replacement of food orders in a restaurant, right? I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted my dressing on the side, but I got 2 cups of dressing poured on my side salad, right? Rebuilding or repairing a product, correction of an administrative activity, right? Processing a loan, right? These are familiar things. Rework, right, is the key. There's cost associated with doing it. I got to do work twice or 3 times or multiple times. So in short, any cost that can be avoided, right? We use the word perfect, but it's back to the question, is there perfection? Perfection's hard to get. So here's that Six Sigma slide I've been talking about. Six Sigma is again, it's a statistically based model for quality management, and it speaks to Sigma is a representation of standard deviation. If that means, if anybody remembers their business statistics, and where you have a really tight range of all of your events or the population of whatever the things are that we're counting are within a tight band of 6 standard deviations. Now when we get to that level, that's the theme behind it. We're not going to go into it. But what does it mean? So it's really about percentage defective versus percentage yield. Yield being how many aren't defective, right? Whatever the its are that we're counting. It could be simple things in daily work like we could count tasks committed to by team members who report to us, and how many are on time, committed to have X number done this week. Well, how many did we get? We got less than X, or we got more than X, whatever it is. So essentially that's a defect model. So if you look at the Six Sigma level, right, the nominally highest, and of course you can go to many more, you can go to however many sigmas one wants, but the industry model is Six Sigma because why? Because at that level, you're looking at 99.9997% good, right? Not defective. So through implementation, institution of good quality management practices, again, we've shown an outline here that we use in service delivery, and diligent tracking of the quantitative aspects of those metrics, how many, how often, how frequent, how many, how big, all those metrics we've talked about. An organization can start to get the feel for how good is my process performance, So again, I was talking about, let's say, a simple work team with a bunch of tasks. Simple example, how good are we at delivering tasks on time, right? Might be a simple metric for a small team, right? In bigger context, right, again, that could be software delivered with, few defects. It could be the example I gave before, J.D. Power's, first-time quality analysis that's produced as an industry standard. I mean, you read about that in the Wall Street Journal when it's released. It's all over the place. So we're looking at almost no defects, but there's always some. Right now, I'll say almost always some. There are industries where there is so much redundancy built in. I can't remember the last time I heard, for instance, of an elevator failure. Right? I have heard of some, but very, very rarely do we hear about elevator failures. But there are some. Right? You do hear occasionally of things like that. Elevators are one of those things where it's kind of notorious example of over-engineered, over-redundant systems. There's extra brakes, etc., to make sure they don't fail. Okay, now we're going to move this closer to software. One of the we talked earlier about when we talked about defects, pre-release and post-release. So I want to link back to that a little bit. We don't have the same terminology here. But note here, when we're talking about prevention, appraisal, and client, where is a defect identified in the life cycle of a service, right? So if it's identified very early on, when it can be prevented, it's relatively inexpensive. If I get it when I'm designing, boy, it's cheap. If I get it when I'm testing as the deliverer of the service, it's still relatively inexpensive. As it gets closer to the client and out of my hands as a service deliverer, boy, the price goes up. Now, maybe in your business, the references are different. Maybe it's an internal client. Maybe, it's Department A providing a service to Department B. Nonetheless, there's a stakeholder and a provider recipient or customer provider relationship, whatever terminology is comfortable. The later in the game the defect is identified and resolved, dramatically more expensive to rectify. Okay, so we've talked about this in a lot of terms. Now, one of the themes here, obviously, is, I hope it's obvious by this, invest in quality. It's important. We talked about Philip Crosby, quality management as a cultural thing. We've talked about various metrics, etc. Invest in quality, right? Now, just to put a balance on this, it is possible to overinvest in quality, and we see the green dot in the middle is the point of diminished returns, right? As we see, if we look at the purple or magenta line at the top, it's the sum of our investment plus the cost of quality. Cost, as I mentioned before, the cost to correct defects. The investment is the investment in process to prevent defects in the first place, right? So we have investment, we have cost, as we've discussed. Add those up, that's the total quality financial picture for an organization. But after a point, it's costing a whole lot more than the return that is delivered on it. So you see that the total investment starts to rise after a point. Now that's going to be different in different circumstances. That's part of managing and operating your quality environment. It's part of tracking your metrics. How much did it cost us to get this, right? In some industries, it's less of a concern if there's a defect, right? If I'm operating a diner, I don't know, maybe that's, in contrast to McDonald's, which is highly process oriented, everything's turnkey, right? Do it this way or don't do it at all. versus, your local diner. Yeah, it's probably a difference in the perspective on acceptance of defects and how much we'd invest in that. So it can be overinvested. So let's recap a little bit. We've talked through our agenda, the first 3 items in our agenda. We've given you a definition of quality, actually a couple of definitions. We've talked about an approach to quality. We've talked about the value or the cost of quality, the segment we just looked at. And we've looked at a number of elements that can be built or should be built into a quality management operational framework. And we're not going to review them all here, but here's the list just in recap of everything we've looked at. So now let's just pause here and I'll see if there's any other questions. Yes?
In the slide that you showed that said value basis Six Sigma, the cost numbers, are those across every industry? Are they generalized or are they specific industries?
Yeah, those were generalized, right. So it's a composite number as across multiple industry segments. I don't know which industry segments. I'm sure it's not everything, but it is a generalized composite number intended to reflect, overall value of investment in Six Sigma.
Okay.
Right. Good question. Thanks. Anyone else?
Okay.
Clear as mud. Clear as all makes sense. Okay.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to head into our practical workshop. And we've been kind of keeping the food thing going here. So, you know what? We're going to make a sandwich, right? We have a deli called the New Cali Bistro. And here's a scenario that we're going to work through. And we have some help from Dilke, our great assistant in the back, and Tom and I are going to be working with you on this. It's a quality scenario, right? Smile and say cheesesteak. The New Cali Bistro is a hip and hoppin' lunchtime restaurant serving California fresh salad, soup, sandwich, and some American classics. All right, so here's a scenario. A customer is placing an order. New Cali prides itself on creativity and flexibility, and most importantly, satisfying its customers. The server begins the scene. Follow the dialogue and note in the quality response worksheet, which we'll hand out, how each quality framework parameter was discussed during the role play. This is a role play discussion.
How do the kindergarten teachers, they do this? Everybody?
We're already in back?
Okay, so let's bring it back together. Let's first of all, any just general comments anybody wants to make about it? What did it seem like? Did the quality model make sense to you in this environment?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So let's just kind of open discussion here. We're not going to go around the tables necessarily, but let's look at application. What did somebody? Let's get a raised hand so we don't have shouting. What was the application?
A sandwich.
A sandwich. Everybody buy that? Right?
Philly.
Philly sandwich. Okay, maybe a little more specific. Same view by the customer and the server. Whatever the customer's view of what the application was, right, by the definition, I'm a customer. I ordered something. I think the application is X. The server's receiving the order. The server thinks the application is X. Are they the same in this case?
No.
Did they line up? You think they're different? What was different?
All the ingredients.
So all the ingredients
Of the standard.
from the standard. Okay, so it was a special order was maybe part of the application here. It wasn't a standard menu item. So a standard menu item certainly could have been an application. In this case, we'll say special order. Okay. How about the size? Did the customer make a reference to size or have an understanding of size?
After it was ordered. I mean, after it was suggested, the 2 sizes.
After it was suggested, 2 sizes, right? Right. So the server representation of size, any different? Same. Got to the same place. They were in concurrence, right? Requirements were in concurrence, right? They had agreement on requirements. Early. We talked about getting concurrence early enough. Okay. How about effort? How was the effort dimension recognized or addressed by the customer?
Probably time.
Time.
Time to prepare.
Okay, time to prepare. Okay. What do you guys think of that? Effort. What was our definition?
It's going to take more effort. Yeah, definitely going to take more effort to build this.
Take more effort. Take more effort
Did you
to
include
build it.
planning in the effort at all, or?
Not really, but go ahead. I mean, if that's sure. Well, this is open, right? We're just considering these things, right? I mean, this is it's a little bit convoluted deliberately because we wanted to raise questions, right? In the real world, right? It's never perfectly clear, right? We sort through it. So maybe planning was part of it. From the customer's point of view, was the customer really interested or concerned in the effort, how much work it took? Customer probably didn't care, maybe, right? You just told me that you're going to make me this great sandwich because I'm from Philly, right? I don't care how long it takes, right? You told me you could deliver, man, deliver, right? Right? Customer cares, doesn't care, right? How about the server? What was the server's perspective on effort?
Willing, but didn't introduce the cost item. Could have been something the server could have said, this is not a standard order, and so for these things that we're going to do based on what we're able to do for you, it's going to cost you a little bit more.
Exactly, right? So now let's just, and I'm just refer back to your questions earlier. Could that be an opportunity to introduce a defect, right? There's a risk there, right? Because we didn't talk, might the chef even understand, right? There's some risk there. There's risk associated with any one of these metrics. And when risk is introduced, the possibility of defect goes up, right? So there's a risk factor we just heard, okay? How about staff? Oh, go ahead. You have a question?
Would another risk possibly be, I mean, let's say it's lunchtime and this one special order, so doing a special order could cause your whole process to backlog.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, for this one satisfied customer, you're going to have 10 unhappy customers because you're going to miss your 5-minute deadline.
Excellent point. Right, excellent point. Right. Another great idea.
So as someone who's running this place, you're going to think of ways to mitigate that risk because that's going to come up multiple times. You're going to have plans in place for when that occasion happens, right? So, good.
The chef maybe appears to be a little bit of an artiste. So who cares,
Right.
Give it, bring it on, right? That's right with priorities. Okay, well that was effort, right? How about staff? Same question, right? Customer's perspective on interest in staff. Did the customer know, say anything, care? I'm seeing heads.
I didn't care.
Customer didn't care about staff, right? Like this gentleman, get them all busy. You told me you're going to, right? Get them all busy, right? All right, how about the server? Any reference or concern? What did the server say or have to consider about staff?
The chef could do the job. He could actually perform.
The chef, the reference to the chef. Right person, right seat, right person, right? Yep. How about duration?
Customer pointed out the menu says 5 minutes. but
5 minutes, and what was the commitment?
10 to
10 to 15, right? Understood, both same, customer,
discrepancy.
initially a discrepancy at least, right? But was it resolved favorably before the commitment was made? Because that's, right? Right, so it was resolved favorably and they got concurrence before the commitment. Okay, how about defects? There's a little bit of a red herring here. Any defects in this?
Well, at the end, he was like, let us shred it now.
Let us shred it. Okay, anyone else?
But that didn't go into the original order. That wasn't part of the requirements. It was an expectation, but it wasn't a requirement.
Why was it an expectation?
Because he made the comment, probably eating it, well, next, you know what I noticed? I would have liked to have had shredded lettuce.
Maybe
But
that's
you didn't
the way
ask
to do
for
it.
shredded lettuce.
Maybe that's the way to do it, the original, what you say.
Yeah, so Pat's in Philly maybe uses shredded lettuce, right? And so maybe there was an expectation set, ma'am, yes, in the back.
That was looking at that as part of feedback. Because it says there, the chef can do next time you have shredded lettuce. I was thinking more of feedback.
Feedback, yes. Yeah, I think so too, yeah. So I agree with both comments. That was intended to be a little bit of a red herring because it wasn't an agreed upon requirement, right? It was not established up front. There was an expectation. All traditional Phillies have shredded lettuce. You know, right, real world, we get that stuff, right? I mean, we get an HP all the time, I can assure you. Everybody has that, you know? So why don't I? Why doesn't my system have that, right? Of course. So reality is, right, expectations are set from a lot of factors, right? Environmental factors, industry standard, whatever they may be. So expectations are different than requirements, right? We're seeing here, right? And can be tracked, right? Ultimately, this could lead to, you know, a change process, maybe, whatever. All right. So that's defects. How about change? Was there a change element here? Customer's view of change. So the gentleman in the middle.
They wanted to change it to a hoagie after.
Hoagieize it, right? And so let's explain further. So why are we defining that as a change?
They agreed on the requirements and completed the transaction. And the customer came back and said, well, they changed their mind. The server had to do an agreement as well, saying that the chef probably hasn't started and you can get a change in.
Okay, anyone else? We buying that? Everybody see that?
Well, I mean, he asked for lettuce and tomatoes and peppers and onions, so it was quite a bit of a change.
Right, yes,
To the
significant
standard
elements.
offering.
Right, oh yeah. The whole thing, right, it progressed more and more. But from the perspective of the definitions, right, and in project management and quality management, there was kind of a package of change. We'll say all those elements were a package because they were requested all at the same time as one request. And I would agree that hoagieize it was a change for the very reasons the gentleman in the middle cited. All right, so how about project types?
New development.
So new development. So let's put it in terms of the restaurant. So it is new development. Let's say in terms of this restaurant. So it can come from anywhere. What are the project types that the New Cali Bistro performs? Getting ready to say something back there. No.
Salad, sandwiches, soup.
Salads, sandwiches, soups. Okay. So okay. So anyone wanna add to that? Other comment? No. Okay, everybody buys that. So I would go there as well. I think salad, soup, sandwiches, those are the project types that are typical in the New Cali Bistro. We regularly do these. We might have multiple salads, we might have multiple soups, might have multiple sandwiches, but each one of those is a different project type. We don't make soups the same way we make sandwiches, right? The executive process stuff is different. The technology is different, right? I mean, you need a slicer, a meat slicer, and I don't know, whatever to make a sandwich, and you use other technology to make soup, right? So when we get back to our project types. Service performance indicators. What was a service performance indicator here? A formal one. Was there a customer? What did the customer think? Anything? Nothing?
Was the sandwich what they ordered?
Philly style.
Philly style.
Said the chef came through.
Chef came through. So was there a formal indicator So those are all good comments. I'd suggest those were the qualitative responses. Chef came through, right? This is great, wow, right? Good feedback, right? So was there anything formal? I think we're missing one thing possibly.
It didn't say what time the sandwich was actually delivered, so we don't really know.
We don't know, but there was a commitment to a service performance.
10 to 15
10 to
minutes.
15 minutes, right? So yes, I think that's it. So I think that was at least when this was written, the only intended response to the service performance indicator. All right, any questions now that we've been through this? So all right, oh, go ahead. Yep, got a question.
So about change, an observation probably in real life examples is unless that change is really significant and it really makes a difference between what you're trying to achieve, you should just bin it and get to it later. I think in a real life environment, change is probably one of the things that we think is easy. We toss it in, and it really creates a lot of anxiety. It creates a lot of cost unnecessarily.
It can. So I think that's a great comment. I'll add this as a caution. There are some times and places where change can't be avoided. For instance, in state governments, sometimes there's a legislative change, federal government, whatever it is, right? And so now there's a mandate, it's, do it, right? Got to do it, right? So there are times, but generally, it gets back to it needs to be managed, right? And so we had as one of our tips a change control board, right? That's a mutually operated process or function, mutual between the service provider and the service recipient, where changes are discussed and accepted, prioritized and accepted, right? And so typically in that environment, there's a cost that associates with the commitment change, right? But yeah, so it needs to be managed one way or another, otherwise you get into that environment you said. Okay, excellent. So now, just to bring it back, so we asked you all to do, we're kind of running low on time. We've got a couple more slides to wrap up. One thing I did want to say, we did ask you all to start thinking about this by sending you pre-work. And we didn't process the pre-work today, understand. Hopefully, you see the path that it took us on. I'm going to encourage all of you to go back and kind of try it again now, right? The idea was, think about your work environment, think about these terms which may not be really familiar to you, especially looking at it in composite, right? All the terminology and the quality concepts kind of in aggregate, right? Go back to your work environment, go look at those examples that you gave us, and do it again. See if it makes better sense now. See if there's a way. I mean, these are practical, operational processes and business functions. You can use them every day. So I encourage you all to do that. Now we're going to get back to the detail here, and we're going to do some formal summarization.
Okay, so here we are, the workshop summary, right? So this is a time where we try to wrap things up. I just want to get some feedback from everybody. What were the low points or the low lights of the workshop, and what were the high points of the workshop? What did you learn within there, and how they apply to your job? Does anybody have any comments on those at all? What you've gleaned from this workshop? Please.
The example about the cost of fixing defects.
Mm-hmm.
I like seeing that again. I saw it 15 years ago.
Okay.
That boss that used that drilled it into us about early detection, more cost effective, and I've lost that.
Okay, so good point. You want to see it again? In the thumb drive, we provided the presentation to everybody to take with them, so it's in there for your reference. So you do have that. But I take it you got some value out of that. Okay, great. Michael?
Yeah, I didn't have any lowlights. I thought this was a very good workshop. The takeaway, and it's just maybe a hot button for me, is when we talk about defects, I really get the increased quality. Not so sure that's done, but increased quality, I ought to see less defects. I'm with you on a practical standpoint, but it's a heartburn for me. I don't want to see them. I think if I invest in enough in my environment and I'm thoroughly testing and I've got checkpoints at the quality line, I better not see a lot of I prefer not to see a lot of defects.
Right.
And in real life, I don't know if that happens the way it should be.
Right, and there's two factors there, right? There's complexity, and then there's the human factor as well, right? We all make mistakes on things.
Yeah.
And things get very, right.
Nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not
Right.
advocating that, but I want to see a lot less.
Understood. I think that's what everybody wants. Yes, please.
But to your point, you're talking about once the product's going live, right, or going out versus
Yes.
internal. Because
Yes.
internal, you're expecting defects when you're writing these
Absolutely.
things. You're not going to be 100% correct
Yeah,
on everything, on its functionality.
Absolutely. I think when I'm hearing hundreds and hundreds of defects in production, I'm troubled by it. So what happened to the testing process? What happened to integrated testing? What happened to user acceptance? A lot of things have to fail for you to have that many defects in production. So that's my heartburn.
Makes sense.
Good point. Anyone else on those first two? Okay. What was your kind of aha moment and a turning point here? Did anybody have like an aha moment where they finally, we went through the slides and we went through the exercise and some of the pre-work? When did anybody have an aha moment where they finally grabbed a hold of something that they could take back to the workplace? Go ahead, Mike.
I think change. So we talk about change, and we're used to it. Changes cost money, and so we need to really manage change. Not every time somebody raises their hand and says, "I think I'm going to change that." I understand the silly bill discussion that you just brought up. In fact, those are mandatory and required, but there are some changes that, to be honest with you, they're tossed in there. They slow you down, and ultimately they could actually wait. They could be done as enhancements. They could be done later. And I think if we have a stronger discipline in our change management process, every change does not have to be approved.
Right.
And I think there's a consciousness in the society today that says, well, it's in there, so we all got to vote on it, and we all got to... No, actually, you don't.
Yeah, do we really need this now?
Right.
It's a nice to have later. Can we have it later? And of course, it goes back to locking down requirements on making sure everybody understands what business we're getting into, what we're doing, what we're building here, right? Okay. So,
I have one.
go ahead.
My aha moment might be kind of silly. But when he challenged you on defects, that's something we learned this morning from the keynote speaker. My challenge.
So you're already applying,
Yeah.
you're applying one thing to here. Okay. So your next workshop, you got to take it in the other room. That's the
He
game.
said the challenge,
Okay.
and so I was like, oh, he just did that.
So we kind of want to wrap it up here because we're at the end of time, but we have provided some references here for you to dig in on some of these quality concepts that we've talked about. You heard Tom talk about the Motorola, the Lean Six Sigma. We provided that reference. The team handbook. There's a lot of references in here that you can dig into, and again, they are on your presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to just add, very practical. We asked early on, your experience with quality, and it was kind of spotty. The team handbook was introduced to me in EDS back in the early 90s. And EDS was at that time looking to adopt a Six Sigma model, which of course EDS being big and haughty, I'll say, they're gone now, so I can say that, had to do it their own way. And so they didn't call it Six Sigma like the rest of the world was doing it. They called it little I, big Q, invest in quality. But it was basically an internally branded model for Six Sigma. Anyway, we used the team handbook, and I still have mine. It's literally, it's kind of in the spirit of the Dummies series. And this is kind of quality for dummies. I don't think Joyner and Associates is actually around anymore. I Googled them before this, and I got some real estate brokerage in Jacksonville, Florida or something. But anyway, the team handbook can still be found, and it's, as I said, in the Dummies spirit of the Dummies series. A lot of illustrations, and it's everything from how to run a meeting, a team meeting, with a quality focus, and it introduces many of the kind of practical technical concepts, like we mentioned the Ishikawa diagram, the PDCA cycle from Deming. All the things that we've mentioned today are captured in it in a very easy to use, how-to, hands-on way. I still have mine. I look at it often, and it's you know, for the level that you know, I'm not a quality professional per se, but as a business manager, it's a good reference. So I recommend it highly. If you don't look at any of the other ones, you may want to take a look at that. You can even find the free PDF DB, database.org. Google says it's safe. I'll leave it to you to decide whether you want it down, but it is free. You can download it is free. It's out there you know, it's freeware. Go get this thing if you trust. Do your own research on freepdf.org. Sorry, Scott, for the editorial.
No, that's,
Highly recommend it. Okay, so the summary, our goals, we kind of went through this, but let's ask, what do you think? Did we accomplish these goals? Right? Let me get an answer to the two questions. What's the first one? Can you identify when you have a good quality program? You think you can now? Heads nodding. Anyone who says, I still don't get it.
okay.
Well, it helps to have dedication, people dedicated to the function, and a team, actually. I mean, not just a figurehead, not just the name quality on a slide. It needs to be a dedicated function where people are actually getting paid to perform the work.
Integrated into the business. Okay, how about the second one? Can you identify when you have a quality problem? All right.
That's good.
So let's, Scott, you can put that one. Okay, so just to go back to the beginning, right? We're gonna revisit the quotes. Justification must come from evidence. That's Schuhart, Mr. Control Chart. Joseph Duran, the vital few and the trivial many, the Pareto, proponent. Ishikawa, failure is the seed of success. That's like the story about Edison, right? Mr. Edison, you failed 2,000 times. No, I've identified 2,000 ways not to design a phone, right? So it's kind of echoed here, right? And really I want to leave you with Deming, because this is the key. In God we trust, all others must bring data. And so we said we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty technical stuff in this, and we didn't. We made some references. But the answer to the two questions is, how do I know when I have a good quality program? How do I know when I have a problem? The data will tell me, right? It's all about the data behind those metrics. Okay. Quantify, right? Count. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.